Episode 3, Des Buckingham. Didn't he leave Mumbai?
Yeah, he did. And I felt a little bad, that he's gone. I mean, not in a... Of course, he made the right call, but looking at that touchline and he's not going to be there, it's going to be awkward. What are we going to say?
He changed the hairstyle. We thought we were going in a different direction. The next minute he's at the Mumbai airport and saying goodbye.
Yeah, and we're both wearing white for this one, and he's wearing grey, like the skies in Oxford. Hello, Des, and hello, everyone. Welcome to the third episode of Season 2, and we've got the man who everyone loves. Everyone loves Desmond. Erik, you ready?
Let's go. Obviously, you've left Mumbai City now. We know that was a tough move for you and a very quick move from all parties involved. And from a commentator's point of view, it looked as though what you did last season, obviously you set so many records and, won the league by a mile. And this year you started off without a couple of key players. You get the Champions League. There was so many components that made you not really start in a way that you would have wanted to. Was it the right time for you to jump out of this, this job at Mumbai and go into something different? Did you feel it was the right time for you?
No, I think when you phrase it up like that, I see it very differently. I see it, we were 5 games into the regular season, we were unbeaten. We were in the same place in terms of points and goals scored that we were this time last year when we went on to do what we did. So I thought, although there had been changes, obviously with some players moving on, we'd made a conscious decision to lower the average age of the squad and make it a younger type team. And of course you have to change anyway, and there was some other reasons as to why we made some of those changes. But yeah, I mean, I think people become used to us last year winning games maybe 3 or 4-0. But I think they lose sight of the fact that didn't happen in the first 5, 6, 7 games. It was only late in the season where we started to hit those types of strides where you start to see the differences. So, no, I don't think it was it's never the right time. I certainly wouldn't call it jumping. I'm very happy. Like I said, I've left the team unbeaten again, 5 games into the season. I think the probably added stress that we had at the start of the year that wasn't there last year was, of course, the ACL campaign that was intertwined in amongst the league. So we found ourselves travelling overseas midweek, or travelling to a Champions League game midweek and then coming back and having to make sure that we stepped up for the ISL. So, no, I don't see it as a jump. I don't see it as the right time. I was actually quite excited about what we built over last year and looking to build on it again this year. And I'm sure with a team that's been put together and already the base that they now have for the ISL, that they'll be able to do that.
Right. All good things come to an end, but now that you've mentioned that the timing, we see it differently, you see it differently, and you have a fair point. But did you think this good thing with Mumbai City would come to an end this soon?
No, I didn't. There's been, I think since sort of January, there was obviously a lot of different things that came up, both at club level and international level, but none of them were either the right time. I felt the project we had in Mumbai was strong. I was happy with what we were doing, and it just wasn't the right fit or the right feel for that. And this opportunity literally came out of the blue. The manager that was here at Oxford, he got taken by Bristol City, so a team in the Championship in the English Football League. And he'd only signed a 3-year deal 6 months ago at this club, so that was never on my mind. But of course, when it's I think the added bit of it being your local club where you grew up, that probably played a factor in it, as well as where the club want to go, where their ambition is, and of course where I have been. I've been away for 10 years now, trying to upskill myself. So it just seemed like the right time, as short and as quick as it was.
Yeah, did the City group, really try and stop the move from happening? Obviously, they're quite a progressive group in terms of trying to allow coaches to really push themselves. You never really see coaches get the sack, or they're not very, cutthroat in that sense. But did they try and stop you at all from making this move? And secondly, what were the motivating factors apart from being back home? I would have imagined that being in a Mumbai City Football Club, and you've renegotiated, and money comes into that equation as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, I can't speak highly enough of how well I was looked after in the 4 years I was in the group, first in Melbourne and then for the trust that was put into going to Mumbai after Sergio. So they looked after me, they developed me hugely as a person and as a coach. And to step away from that environment is very difficult in itself because of those reasons. But yeah, it's looking at what the next step may be, and this just I can't quite describe it. I always judge things on your head, your heart, and your gut. And when this opportunity came up, and Oxford were, you mentioned around there was a level of compensation, of course, that was paid. Oxford matched that, and it opened that door to talk to them. And when they set aside what they wanted to do and where they wanted to take this team, it just felt like the right feel, both with my head, my heart, and my gut at the time.
And you've coached a lot of young sides. Your CV is littered with fantastic achievements with younger sides. Even the Mumbai City team, the stuff you did with young players, and obviously being in a league where relegation is not a threat. Of course, there were expectations. After season 1, when you finished 5th, and the way you fought back in season 2 with that remarkable record, you're like, oh wow, this is fantastic. You seem to be in a great place. But now suddenly you've gone into a league in a country where the expectations are different. Relegation, the aggression on the pitch is very different. How do you change your approach to coaching, or do you change your approach to coaching given the set of players you have, given the physicality of the country and how they like playing football, the league, the threat of relegation, all of that?
I think you have to adapt to an extent. Of course, you talk about pressures of relegation, but there's also the excitement of promotion that comes with that. But the good thing about going away, I think 10 years ago I may have adapted myself too much, and I may have tried to be something that I either wasn't or wasn't ready to be. And actually going away and getting the experiences I had, firstly in New Zealand, then Australia, and now in Mumbai, you kind of grow yourself as a person and hopefully as a coach to prepare yourself for all the extra challenges that do come now. So yes, you need to be adaptable, but it's not a case of changing who you are and what you do, because I think in the last 6 or 7 years, we've been able to show in each of those 3 environments, certainly, that we've been able to do well with the resource, been able to have success, however you want to define that, whether it's trophies or otherwise. And if you can combine those two and utilise the skill set of the staff you have around you, which we have now at Oxford, it's a wonderful staff group, you tend to go okay, is what I found, and that's kind of the approach I've taken here.
For us, people who are not coaches or players, for me especially, the only way you can play for a side you really like or control them is maybe play Football Manager, maybe play a little bit of FIFA here and there. But what you're doing now at this age, you've, in a way, as far as a dream job goes, anyone would love to manage their club, their local club. And while it's pressure, it's also privilege. I know you like saying that. It's not always pressure. It's also a privilege to be where you are. But do you think that is there a fear? It's a very human thing to be slightly wary of the fact that if you don't do well enough, is that like your dream job, your dream chance gone? Like, example, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Does it play in your mind? Will you be able to walk the streets of Oxford thinking, oh wow, they brought me here at this age, I'm a local boy, and if I don't do as well as I'm expected to do, what happens then?
Well, I've had that my whole career so far, whether it's being a young coach, coaching older players, whether it's been a foreigner overseas, whether it's been someone that doesn't have experience of either the A-League or the ISL when I arrived. There's always people that are going to question things. There's always going to be challenges. Of course, working at CFG, there's an expectation that we played a certain way and were successful in certain ways. And that's always there. And I think you nailed it. You can look at it as pressure or privilege, whichever way you want to put it. But I look at people like Chris Wilder, who is someone I've worked with. He took his Sheffield United side through the leagues up into the Premier League, and he's just, funnily enough, gone back in there yesterday. So I think it's not about so much a dream job. I think it's about picking the right moments and the right times, and you can't always get that right. Like I said, you have to judge that on so many things and then make what you feel is the best decision at the time. But I could just go back to my head, my heart, my gut. They all signal that it was the right time, it was the right fit, it was the right move, with the ambition that the club have here, and certainly where I think I am as a coach at the moment.
I love the positivity, Des, but it's a horrible job. It must be a horrible job being a manager sometimes, because you're fearing the inevitable, which is getting the sack, right? And I think you've made great jumps, great progressions. Look at someone like Ange. He's done the exact same thing. He's never really waited or got stale somewhere. He's made the right move at the right time. I left I left Melbourne City to go to South Korea and took myself out of that realm. And when I look back on that, I think that was a mistake that I made in terms of not staying with a club that was stable and believed in me, etc., etc. How big of a risk is it for you to technically jump out of that Citigroup realm and go off on your own path, or are you just you're confident enough in yourself to do it without them, or are they still trying to help you in the background? What's the situation?
I think the last 10, 15 years of my career and my life has been a risk, leaving this club, Oxford, at 29, and moving to New Zealand where I knew nobody. It's always a risk. You never know whether it's the right move or it isn't. But I think you weigh up so many factors, and you have to make the best decision that you feel with all of that's in front of you. I think very often you know that when the wrong ones come up, if you know it's wrong to take. You're maybe a bit naive to jump. But no, like I said, City Football Group really helped me. I'm still connected, and it's been left in a very good space in that way. I think wherever you go, there's always an element of risk, and you can never guarantee that you're going to be successful in the next job. But I just take the way I've worked in the last 10 years. You think you have to do as much as you can to be as successful as you can in each of those jobs. And if you do that, whether it goes well or it doesn't, you can always look back and say, I've done what I thought I could. And I've tried extremely hard in the last 10, 15 years to upskill myself to firstly get the opportunities and then to be trusted with them. And if we can keep doing that, that's the main thing for me.
What are you most proud about during your time with Mumbai City?
Not so much I think people will talk about the records, the Shield win of nearly going unbeaten. I think it's the way we did what we did on the field. I think some of the football we played, I heard you guys commentate, talking about it being some of the best football you've seen in the league. I think it allowed players to really express how good they could be. Foreigners, of course, but Indian players really stood up and showcased their abilities in that space. But yeah, more so how we went about what we did. And that was off the field as well. And I think anyone that gets the chance now to walk into that group, you can feel it, you sense it. It's like a real sense of family. It's a very strong and special thing that it takes a long time to build. But the pleasing thing is for me, and I'm sure this will be the case, whoever goes in next will walk into that, and me leaving won't fall over. That all of that will stay. Someone that will come in and have different ideas, of course, and they'll be able to adapt and tweak it. But the whole thing with one person leaving, because of the way it's been built, that won't collapse now. So that's the pleasing thing for me overall.
Pula touched on it before about dressing rooms, and without being disrespectful to Indian football, it feels as though when you play in the UK and you play in India, it's like almost a little bit like you're playing with boys and you're playing with full-grown men in the UK. They're aggressive, they want to kill you, they want to win 3 points, there's relegation, there's promotion. I know Indian football's improved. There's not that aggression level in the dressing room. The second thing to that is the media. It's also exactly the same as what I've just described there. How have you handled the media since you've gone across there? Because they're quite brutal at times, aren't they?
They can be, yeah. It's been, I think, again, you have to, when I've come into a club that's going relatively well so far, and again, we're only a third of the way into the season, so you have to recognise the work that's been done. But again, I've been brought in here for a reason, which is to build on that and to add my own stamp on that to an extent. But yeah, the media is, and I think I won't change who I am. The same way I'm speaking to you guys now, I am who I am, and that's not going to change. I think probably you just have to be mindful of what you do say, and probably say too much. But then a lot of it revolves around, as it does in India, the result and the performance of those results. So we've been fortunate so far. We've played 4 games in 10 days. We won last night, 1-0 in the cup. We won in the FA Cup at the weekend, and we got a good draw at home against Bolton. So it's, as long as we can continue making sure the team perform, that's one way of doing it. But I won't change the way I am with media. I'll be who I am. It's who I am, and hopefully that's enough.
A lot of foreign coaches come to the Indian Super League, most of them, and when they come in and after a season or two, there's always a couple of youngsters who they blood into the first team and they talk very highly about. You've done the same with examples, not only or exclusive, but Apuya, Vikram. There's a few who you really got up to speed. The question that I always ask is, when a foreign coach comes into India, they bring in a few trusted lieutenants with them. Roston Griffiths is an example. But whenever these coaches go away, they don't take anyone from their teams abroad. Mm-hmm. Even though they talk about them in the ISL, like, oh, wow, they can play here, they can play there. You send Apuya to Belgium, for example. Mm. Why is that not happening? Are we ever gonna read a headline, Des Buckingham wants to sign Apuya? This is just an example, putting it out there. Or he wants to sign somebody else from the ISL who's Indian. When is that going to happen?
I think there's probably a host of answers as to that question. I can only answer, I suppose, coming from there to here. I think you need to get a gauge of what the league is and where it is. Firstly, I think you've then got, in some clubs, a lot of it's now not dictated to by the manager. I want this player, I want this. Obviously, they have a say, and some have overall say, some have part say. And then it comes down to budget and timing of recruitment. I see something on the LMA research paper they did the other day, and the average lifespan of a coach or a head coach in the UK, in the English football leagues anyway, is just over 1 year, despite the length of contract you sign. So I think it's one thing having these ideas around what players you want to bring in, but if you don't hit the ground running sometimes, you don't often get a chance to implement too many of your ideas or bring those players in. So there's a whole host of answers, but I'd like to think that I'm still young enough that if it's here or it's somewhere else, I've seen enough in the 2.5 years that I've been in India. I'd have no problems bringing some of those players, whether they were foreign or Indian, into some of the environments that certainly I'm working in now and I'm sure will be in the future.
And do you think Indian players are too comfortable because of how much they're paid in India? Is there enough motivation to go play at probably half the salary abroad, given we know the amounts that they earn here, some of the stars? Do you think it's just too comfortable? What is the motivation to go out?
The ones I've worked with, I'd say no. I don't think money... I mean, money's nice, of course. It plays a part. But a lot of the players that I've been fortunate to work with, especially in Mumbai, I think from an opportunity point of view, I think everyone's aware if they were to leave India from a playing perspective, they would have to take a drop in salary to come in most leagues across the world. But I would say the players that I've worked with, they'd easily forego that to get an opportunity to further themselves and be one of the next players to really push outside of the country and be that kind of next Chetri or someone that people can look to say this is the next kind of player and that role model for people going forwards.
Yeah. I mean, we're trying to get into your early life a little bit now, Des, and get away from the Mumbai stuff. But obviously, we know that you're a pilot, a ski instructor, I believe, from the south of England, tidy-looking customer. Everyone would assume that you've come from privilege. I think everybody who has a chance to come and work in India probably has that thought. But we want to know, from your point of view, what have you had to fight for in your life? What have you... you started coaching at a young age. You're obviously aggressive and passionate to take that on. You wanted the pressure. To get a pilot's license, you have to want to have the pressure. So firstly, have you come from privilege, or have you had to really work for everything that you've been given? Yeah,
look, my mum didn't have a job. She brought me and my sister and my brother up. Dad was a bricklayer and a handyman by trade and literally retired doing the same job 6 months ago. So we were brought up well in terms of love and care, but in terms of privilege, whatever you think privilege might be, if it's lots of money and lots of opportunities and things that were given, there was none of that. It was very much you were loved. But again, going into a sport where really there was no family history, obviously I hadn't played to professional level anyway. You're always having to fight your way. But again, the way that I tried to do it was was to try and learn. But I was also very fortunate to almost fall in and amongst some very good people who put their arm around me and took me with them on a journey that has turned into what it is today. And yeah, I do like a challenge. Like I said, there has been, wherever I've been, especially in a coaching journey, whether it's, like I said, young coach coaching older players, you haven't got the experience to do certain things. The challenges are always there, but I think that's the excitement to life. I think that's the excitement in football, and it's one that I've never shied away from.
And just quickly, sorry, Paul, before you say that.
Yeah.
So in terms, like we talk about your life and you wanted to pressure yourself and, going into this role at Oxford, I mean, a lot of coaches in that, I'm sure you've had other opportunities to leave Mumbai City, but a lot of people would have sat here and gone, I can get 2 or 3 trophies here, another extension. You've wanted to go and push yourself into that cauldron of fire into UK football. What possessed you to think that way? Because you're obviously so progressive that even you're not thinking about Oxford now, you're thinking about the next. So something must have driven you from a young age to want to be something special, no?
Oh, believe me, I'm not thinking about anything more than Oxford at the moment. I think the key thing for me is, again, when I look back at the jobs I've had, I've never been one to jump from job to job. Whenever I've committed to something, I have committed to it over whether it's a 2-year journey, a 3-year journey. I think you have to do that to see it through and to give yourself the best chance to show what you can do as well. And when I look back at 6 years in New Zealand, I look at 2 years in Melbourne, 2.5 years in Mumbai, I think it's a good level of commitment that's been given, but also a good level of support and trust that's been put into me as well across those. So for me, like I said, it wasn't something that was planned to leave Mumbai. It was something that literally come up within a 48-hour period that moved extremely quickly. And when I weighed it up, I still wasn't ready to quite leave. And I think you may have seen some of the scenes at the airport. It was very emotional, kind of 24, 48 hours. But like I said, going back to a different challenge after what I thought was, yes, you could stay in India maybe for another 2 years, but this almost seemed like another challenge that I was ready for, and it felt like a good fit to take.
What was the eureka moment, Des, when you decided, oh, this is going to be my profession, football head coach? People are lucky. People who know early on that what they want to do in life, they are in a way, and I count myself among those people, lucky enough to know that, I think I can do this, so that they can work towards that mission. What was your eureka moment? Do you remember the moment when you went, wow, I think I can be head coach, or I can be coach in football?
I think there's probably 2. The first was when I was 29 and I made that decision to leave the UK. I got asked a question by a guy from the FA, and he came in to audit the work we were doing in the club as part of an EPPP, Elite Player Performance Plan here. And he said to me, what do you want to do? You're doing sort of 3 or 4 jobs, working with the first team, looking after the academy. Where do you see yourself in the future? And I said, you know what, I've never thought about it. I've been so lucky with the opportunities I've had in the 10 years of being at Oxford, that those experiences have allowed me to get a sort of plethora of experience and knowledge and working with different people and age groups. But I said to him at the time, I want to be a head coach. I'm in no rush to be. But at that time, the only way you could actually work full-time in football was to be a head coach. There wasn't all these academies in play that there are now. But that was my thinking. He said to me then, if you want to be a head coach, you need to gain experiences that the head coach is going to be expected to have, which is managing staff, working with budgets, boards, media. And that was the reason for moving overseas. It was a job that I took in New Zealand that ticked a lot of those boxes from a job point of view. And it was probably 3 years into New Zealand in terms of the next part where we had some really good success with the New Zealand under-20 team. And although it was a youth team, what we were able to create in a very short period of time with limited resource really indicated that we could create something very special. Where it's kind of different approach and a different way of doing that to what I'd seen. So those 2 moments from that, I think from 2019 was probably when it was, this could actually turn into something as a as a profession. Up until that point, you kind of just, you know, done what you could and done as well as you could that allowed you to get where you got. And I've still maintained that, but they're probably the two things. So 2019 was probably the real, or 2018, 2019, the 2020s World Cup.
And what was plan B, plan C? Like some people ask me, and I probably tell them I would have loved to be a sports scientist or maybe a lawyer, you know?
Jeez.
Because I can, hey, I can win an argument, come on. but what was plan B and plan C for you? Like if you didn't make it, what's the fallback?
It wasn't something I ever really thought about, but if I was to go into one, I think it would be a teacher. I started off as a teacher for 4 years. I think I could go back into that profession. Teaching what, I wouldn't be sure, whether it be coaching or sports science or something else, but teaching certainly. And I always had an ambition as a kid, and I think this is where the pilot's license come from, to fly planes. Now, whether or not that's realistic right now, it's a different thing. But I think teacher would have been the fallback option if coaching hadn't worked, and if it doesn't in the future.
You've always been so honest, Des, and that's why obviously we'd love having you on the podcast, because it's a lot of truth that you speak. And some coaches have that facade where it's, here I am in the media and this is what I am in real life. And you must be so burnt out with the amount of games you had at Mumbai before coming across to a new journey at Oxford. I even feel with my job now becoming a commentator, I speak so much to my family, like you don't shut up anymore, because I've become that role. I've become this person that just has to speak for a living. With coaching, are you able to separate the two, or do you bring Des Buckingham home to the family and go, I'm thinking and talking like a coach, or do you just change as a person?
It's a difficult one for me to answer. I think you're better off asking some of the players and the staff. But we lived together for 2.5 years in Mumbai, on top of each other, literally. I'd like to think I don't change too much. I think when you take to the field, I think the difference is you hold each other accountable to what you say you're going to do. You know, so there is that element of firmness, I suppose, in that space, but it's not one that changes. I mean, as we're speaking now, it's very much for me. This is who I am as a person. This is who I am as a coach. Obviously, what we talk about and how we do it is very different. But no, the football environment or the sports environment for me, it's just being a little bit firmer and being a little bit more clear and holding each other to account. Whereas obviously with family, you can still do that to an extent, but it's probably a bit more laid back and enjoyable, where there aren't the eyes and you don't always have to talk about the game.
You know, when you first met your staff, the first meeting, I'm told you brought an ice box full of beers and removed the chairs and brought in bean bags.
Got my vote already.
And we obviously know that you're a polite person, you're a gentleman, you always treat people with a lot of respect. That's the biggest takeaway that we get from people who have worked with you. But here's the tough one, and as you grow older as well, do you think you're too nice? Do you think it's gonna catch up with you? Have you ever been not nice?
I think you've asked me that a couple of halftime team talks. I've got that about me, and it's been used many times in India. It's been used when it's needed, but it's when it's needed. But I'm a big believer in, you set the standard and you hold each other to that standard. And if you do that, there is no need at times to continually bark orders and lose yourself and be that way. You have to have that. People need to know that is there, of course. But I think not gone are the days, but it's not just about me doing that. It's the assistant coach, it's the players. They do that. And that was the key to how we worked and how successful we were last year. But to your story, yeah, I did. My first week in Mumbai when I arrived, as I said, I knew nobody. Anthony Fernandez, the assistant coach, was so good with me and brought me into that group of staff. And I said to get to know people quickly, we got them into a room, we had a box of beers, and it was only one or two. It wasn't like we stayed up for the evening. But it was kind of just to break the ice and say, look, this is who I am, this is what I am. And the staff done the same. They went round, and it was something that I took from New Zealand without the beer. In the indigenous world, called a pepiha, where you pretty much just speak about yourself and who you are. But rather than this is me as a football coach, we spoke about this is who I am, where I'm from, this is me, part of my family. So you kind of reveal a little bit about yourself. I brought that process to India, one culture to another, and it allowed us just to maybe get a little bit quicker down the road in terms of building those relationships and them getting to know me getting to know them. And it was something that we did with the players, again, without the beer, where in the first week of being in Mumbai, we sat with them one-on-one, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, one-on-one with each of the players, which was something they'd never had before, because we wanted to involve them in what we were doing, and we wanted to involve them in their development, and we wanted them to have a voice within what we do and how we do it. And again, it wasn't something they were used to, so it was trying to get them comfortable with the conversation to start with. And when I look at that, when I leave now, 2.5 years later, if you walked into our environment now, players, they'll come over, they'll speak freely, they'll speak within each other, they'll speak to each other, which, you know, it wasn't something that was like that when I arrived. And it wasn't about changing Indian culture, it was about changing the sporting environment which we worked in, and just seeing the benefit and enhancement that could have to get us better.
So you changed the dressing room straight away, which I find fascinating as an ex-pro, because that's the biggest and the most important thing is the dressing room. If you haven't got a good one, you're stuffed. And I think from playing here as well, you can tell the Indian players particularly have to be motivated in a certain way. I'm not going to name names for coaches in the league that are presently coaching, but I have seen even this week on the sideline abuse, like personal abuse, and after which there's nothing coming out of that player. Hammering someone, it can work, right? You've now gone across to the UK, and I think as part of your coaching journey, there's probably not a lot of put the arm around people to motivate them. Have you already seen that, oh, maybe I need to be a bit firmer here, or maybe I need to, raise my voice and be a bit more authoritarian already?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think that's more because people are used to that way of working. That's generally the way coaching has been over the last 20 years, and that still plays a major role because that's what people have become used to and are used to. So like I said, you have to adapt, and part of that adaptation is maybe doing that and doing that more often. But I'll go back to whether it's young players or it's old players, the reality is everybody wants to be coached. We've got players that are 33, 34, 35, but just because they're older and they're more experienced, they still want the level of detail. They still want to be coached the same way that a young player at 18, 19, 20. Well, I think a lot of the attention and times can be development players here. We're going to spend our coaching here because these guys know what they're on about. But the reality is, yes, there's different ways of dealing with people, but the reality is the main thing that they want is to be coached. And that may look slightly different for each of them. But that's probably the bigger thing. It's recognizing what has been, what needs to be done, and then, giving people what they actually want and need.
Des, you've coached many teams. Do you coach them all in the same way? Is there a Des Buckingham way of playing? Is there a set of principles that you follow that you do not stray from? Or do you look at the team and be like, okay, this team has this, it has this, it has this. I don't have... Obviously, you brought in Chankta. That was your first signing. And you needed that width, that kind of player on that wing. Or do you go, okay, this is the squad I have, and they can only play this particular way. They cannot play the way I want them to play. Or are you very set in your ways about, this is how my team will play, this is the template, and you all have to be coached enough to learn the template and eventually succeed?
I think it depends on the environment you go into. Like if you go in at the start of the season, or you go in at the end of the season where you have time to maybe have a say on the recruitment, you get a chance to do that. You can set the team up to play a way that you may want, but inherently you always come into an environment where you've got a group of players that have been assembled by somebody else. But if you've taken the job, and I go back to my earlier point, you've done your homework, you get that feel, is it the right thing for me? Hey, this is how I want to coach, this is how I want to play. Does that team have the ingredients to start with that will allow me to at least start that process? And I think within the first year in Mumbai, we obviously had a way that we wanted to work. We couldn't quite get it quick enough to sync together, but the basis of it was there. But whilst we had that window in January, whilst we had that window at the end of the season, we were able to then either work out the players we needed or move on the players that didn't quite fit that. So it's now the same here in Oxford. Like, they're a team that are doing okay. We're a team that are doing okay at the moment. But there are things that I want to do with this team that can be done with the players that we have. And for me, it's about the structure. How do we structure it? And then how do the players fill it? But again, for me to really implement my ideas on a side, you do need time. And those times come in the windows in January. They come at the end of the season. But in the meantime, you have to make best do with what you have. But if you've done your homework before you come in, you're happy enough that what is there already, that you can do enough with to still have the success that you both want.
But what is that way? What is your way of football?
I think it was on full show last season. If I was to,
Yeah, but we
I
want to
think,
listen
right,
from your words. We want to hear it in your words.
yeah, look, I want a team that excites me watching from the side, and it sounds corny, but I want an attacking type team. I don't want to be a coach that sits back to defend. I want to go out and win games, but win them in a style of play that is expansive. We score more goals than the opposition. I think the teams that I've coached in the last 10 years have all had a substantial positive goal difference when I've left. And I just want to be excited from the side. And I want players to be comfortable to be themselves, to be able to express that and develop themselves. And I think if you can get enough of those ingredients together, you get the outcomes as to some of the football that we were able to demonstrate last year.
My last question for you, Des. If you were still here this season, do you think you would have won the ISL?
I think we'd give it a good go. I really do. I think the league has got stronger, but I think the foundation that is within that group of players, there is enough there to certainly challenge all the way through to the end. And I don't know whether the team can go undefeated the way we did for 18 games, but the ingredients are all there. The ingredients are all there. And like I said, me coming away from that, I don't think will change that. And if the test of what we've built will be in the next six to 9 months, because it's a good staff group that are there. Everyone's clear on what they do. The players really suit, the different ways that they can now play. It's not so much the first season. I remember you talking about just having plan A. There's now several different ways that team is set up to play. So he did, yeah. So I think, yes, to answer your question, yes, I think they'll certainly be there or thereabouts at the end of the season.
All right, last one from me as well. Who are your managerial / coaching inspirations? And because the three of us are all 4 or 5 years apart, we've seen same kind of managers, coaches come through. Who are your inspirations?
I got 3. I had 2 growing up. One was Alex Ferguson, being able to manage and differentiate in his management with the players he had. Obviously, it's a very good group of players, some very big names he had, and he managed them very differently but very well, and obviously had the success that he had. Arsene Wenger was another one. I'm an Arsenal fan, but just how he come in from Japan brought so many different ideas and didn't quite change, I don't want to say change the idea of what a head coach or manager looked like and could be, but certainly opened up the door to, okay, this can be done a slightly different way. They were 2 for me growing up that I'd certainly looked to and still do. And then, of course, right now, being from the City Football Group, coming from there, it was Pep Guardiola. And kind of how he continues to evolve his sides, how he continues to get the success that he's had, while still managing a large group of players. And I think between those 3, you take what you can from those, but you still need to have a very clear idea on who you are and what you are, because you don't want to copy either. You have to be who you are.
That was Des Buckingham, and honest as always. And what I loved about that, Pula, is particularly that question in the middle about trying to get an Indian footballer across to the UK. Why hasn't it occurred yet? And there's some brutal honesty about the amount of money that they earn, the opportunities they're not getting. But somebody somewhere has to take a risk eventually. I think Des Buckingham might be one of those first coaches.
Yeah, and I think that would be coming a full circle for Des Buckingham. If he signs a player from here, a young player that he knows, then not only has he left a legacy, the legacy continues. That's true giving back to Indian football.
Certainly, and we wish him well in his endeavours overseas in the UK. He's progressive. He wants to go to another level beyond this, but a little piece of us wishes he'd come back to the ISL one day.